Hello, Sid Roth here, and my guest needs no introduction. His name is Robert Henderson, and you may know him by the book that many of you read. It's On the Courts of Heaven. It's sold over 1 million copies, I understand.
Yes.
The reason that I have Robert here is because God told me. No better reason than that.
Right.
But in addition to that, he does an exclusive television show for our network, ISN. It's Supernatural Network. And he's here doing his series of shows. As a matter of fact, we have 39 exclusive shows on our network. You can download it. Just go to the App Store and type my name in, Sid Roth, S-I-D-R-O-T-H. Nice orange app will appear that will say ISN. It's Supernatural Network. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and our goal is to have every show radiate the new move of God's Spirit. I don't know about you, Robert, but I am tired of the old. I want the new.
Amen.
I want the new. Yeah. I am grateful to God for the old. Yeah. I've been part of that history, but thank God for the new. If the world doesn't have a new outpouring of God's glory, I'd say we are out of time.
Yes.
I would.
Yes.
I've never seen such a mess in my entire life of what we humans have done to this wonderful world that God created. One of the things that I really am excited about is your new show, because it's on the theme I'm talking about. And it is called Show Me Your Glory. It sounds like you took it from that Bible.
I did, but I wrote a little book, a little booklet. That's called Show Me Your Glory. What had happened, I'd preached a message on that. Out of Exodus chapter 33, about where Moses cried out to God, "Show me your glory," and it really captured some attention, and people began to say, "Well, we want the glory of God." I mean, which I am absolutely in agreement with you that if we don't have an outpouring of His glory, if we don't have that, then I don't see any hope for the future. With the glory, I think the future is endless. But without it,
I have to go one step further, Robert. The glory is so real to me, and it's already started throughout the world, but at a lower level. But we're going to a level in the glory that, in other words, the devil's made his move. He's made his move. I mean, we all know, read any newspaper in town, conservative, liberal, anything. You'll see the devil's made his move. Now God is going to make His move.
Amen.
And watch out, devil. Believers have no idea, Robert, about what is ready to hit planet Earth. Now, one thing on the title of your show, Show Me Your Glory. I love this because I've studied this in Exodus, where Moses actually asks a question of God. And that's a question that you should be asking. God, show me your glory. And this is how God answered his question. He came up with a synonym for glory. God didn't say, I'll show you my glory. What God said is, I'll have my goodness pass before you. So I look at it, Robert, as a synonym for glory is goodness. Are you ready for some goodness in your life?
Amen.
I'm ready. I know you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, with COVID and everything, but because of the way God taught you in operating in the courts of heaven, tell me two people that have been healed of what the world doesn't seem to really have an answer for, COVID.
Yeah, we get a lot of testimonies in, but these two really caught my attention. The first testimony was the story of a woman who was in the hospital who had COVID. They didn't think she was going to make it. She was unconscious. In her unconscious state, she was in the courts of heaven, and the devil was there, this is her words, bringing accusations against her. But in the courts of heaven, there was people that were advocating for her, the Lord that was advocating, and the enemy's accusations were dismissed, and a judgment was rendered in her behalf. Well, the result was she was healed of COVID, and she came out of the hospital. When she went back to her church,
how critical was she of COVID?
From everything I understand, she was at the edge of death. I mean, it was very, very serious. And so she got healed. She went back to her church, and she started telling them in her church what happened, because she's thinking nobody knows anything about the court of heaven. She didn't know anything about it. So she starts telling them, and they come to her and they said, "Have you ever heard of Robert Henderson in the court of heaven?" And she said, "I don't have a clue what you're talking about." And they gave her the book, and she sent us an email, and she said, "Everything he said in the book is what happened to me when I was unconscious." She said literally it was verbatim what happened to her, and she knew nothing about the court of heaven, nothing about it.
Okay, that's a woman that knew nothing and lived the revelation that Robert has been teaching for so many years. How about the person that was healed of COVID through the internet?
Yes.
That's even more exciting. That means you could be healed of anything if you watch this show. That's what that means.
This particular man, their relatives had been praying for him. They understood the courts. They had all the material. They were doing it all, but he wasn't getting any better. He was unconscious and very close to death. They finally said to the staff at the hospital, "Would you be willing to go into his room and take an iPad or a computer and turn it on and let us zoom in?" Now, he's unconscious. He doesn't have anything to do with it. And they said, yes, we would. So they did that, and they online went into the courts of heaven and pled his case before the Lord. The next day, he woke up. And he is completely restored, and from everything I understand, back home, completely healed and restored.
You know, I like to have fun, but this COVID is serious, diabolical, deadly, and I don't know about you, and I don't know about you, Robert, but I have personal friends that have died as a result of this. And for those that have not read your book, and don't understand, I don't have a clue about what we're talking about, could you give me the rabbinical definition of the courts of heaven? Here's the rabbinical definition. Tell it to me while you stand on one foot. I won't ask you to, I'm not going to make you do that. That's the rabbi's way, okay? On one foot, that means sure.
Yes. It is the judicial system of heaven. Out of Daniel 7, the court was seated, Daniel saw it, and the books were open. And it is the judicial legal system of heaven where God as judge sits upon his throne, rendering judgments based on evidence presented. And I've learned so much since the last time I was on your show.
I know you have.
But because one of the things I've learned is taking all that Jesus has legally done for us and presenting it in the courts of heaven as evidence. That we deal with the blood of, we deal with all the negative stuff through the blood in our bloodlines, but so much of what Paul wrote, he wrote it, and it was legal statements. It was stated verdicts in the courts.
But Robert, someone is asking, why don't I just say, Jesus, heal me? I'll answer it. Because he hasn't. At least it hasn't manifested, and that's where the rubber meets the road. So what do you have in your life that you've been praying for? Do you have some unsaved relatives, children, husband, wife? Do you have sickness you're dealing with? Do you have a financial crisis going on? Do you have an addiction you can't get on top of? As a matter of fact, and if you do, and it's biblical, come on, jump in the water. Because your classic book, you just have a new edition of it because you told me that it was because of you've learned so much, but you also feel it's more easy. It's easier for the person to really grasp the way you've expressed it.
Yes. User-friendly.
User-friendly. That's
you
the
said
word.
that, user-friendly. That's the
Yeah.
word. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, absolutely. It's the second book. It's called A New Edition on the Classic in Prayer, on Prayer, which is Operating in the Courts of Heaven. And it's not a rehash of the old material. Yes, I cover some of the older material, but I actually bring it out of a lot of mystical ways of thinking and into more practicality. I'm all for the mystical. I love that. But I've tried to say, okay, how can we help people practically apply this and step in the words? Plus, there's a lot of new stuff that's in there as well, because I really wanted to give another level of teaching on that initial book.
And you know, when you first started teaching on it, my thought was, I've got a lot of friends that go to heaven, but I never go to heaven. So therefore, and not for me.
Yep.
I mean, that was my thought. I just didn't realize in the Bible, it literally says in the book of Ephesians that we are seated with Jesus in heavenly places in heaven. So in effect, we're in two realms at the same time. And to get to heaven, it isn't a mystical experience. It's taking the word.
That's right.
And by faith, what's our Bible say? Without faith, we can't please God. By faith, we, through our sanctified imagination, we are in heaven, not based on imagination, but based on the written, living word of the living God. And I never got that until, until later.
Yes, and see, I always think, I've wondered, like a human being, Lord, why did you unveil this to me? There's so many people more spiritual than me. And what I mean by that, more gifted in the spiritual dimensions. These people that see and hear, I love them. I love to converse with them.
Guess what? I'm in that category too. Oh, God, why did you give me all these networks? I mean, it's way beyond my job description. I'll tell you why he gave it to you. I'll tell you why he gave it to me. I'll tell you why he's about ready to give it to you. Because you're going to give all the credit, all the praise, all the glory to God.
Amen.
That's why, because you certainly can't take it for yourself. I can't, can you?
No. What I tell people, I said, if Robert Henderson can operate in the court of heaven, anybody can.
Absolutely. Well, you're begging a question, and it's a very important question. I asked you this at about 6 a.m. this morning.
Yes.
or earlier. He texted me, he said he was up, so I figured I was the only one that gets up early. So he was up, and I said, what are some of the major reasons that prayers are not answered? Because there are a lot of Christians that say, I know God answers prayers. I know he wants to answer my prayers. I know it's an already done deal by faith, but the truth is I've been wrestling with this addiction. I've been wrestling with this sickness for years, for decades. Now, what's the matter, Robert? Am I Swiss cheese? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, from a court of heaven perspective, the reason that prayers are not answered is not because God doesn't hear us and God doesn't care, which the enemy wants to say that's the reason. But the reason is because there's legal issues against us. See, remember when I teach on the court of heaven, I say that God put prayer in three dimensions in the book of Luke. Approaching God as Father in Luke 11:2, approaching God as friend in Luke 11:5-8, but then in Luke 18:1-8, approaching God as judge. Well, the reason you approach God as judge is because the adversary there in that story, which is the Greek word antidikos, which means one who brings a lawsuit, there's a lawsuit against us in the spirit world that is denying us the right of Jesus' covenant benefits.
And you know what I'm hearing in the natural, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yep.
How much more in the supernatural?
That's right. See, antidikos It literally it's the title of the adversary. It means one who brings a lawsuit, but it comes from two words: anti, which means instead of, and dikos, which is rights. So the enemy uses legal things against us to deny us what's rightfully ours, because Jesus' death on the cross legally purchased everything for us. But the enemy says, but I have a case against you that won't let you have that. So we go into the courts, we deal with our own stuff, but we deal with bloodline issues. And we say, Lord,
excuse me, what do you mean by that?
The bloodline is generational ancestral issues.
Yeah, but I can't even go back too many generations. Yeah. Well, I actually can. I just found out because of DNA that I'm related to a woman from the tribe of Judah. Wow. But I don't know anything about her. Yeah. I don't know anything about all those generations back. So you're telling me, or God says it, that if I have an ancestor whose name I can't even tell you, that I know nothing about, and they were a horrible sinner, the sins of ancestry pass on in the bloodline.
That's right. Because our life was being destroyed. When the court of heaven came, to me, the revelation, life was being destroyed. Anything you can imagine was happening. It was revealed through a prophetic person that someone in my bloodline had made a covenant with a demon god named Parax. And when I repented of that and asked God to cleanse,
even though you didn't do it, you repented because it's your bloodline. That's part of you.
When I did that, I mean, all the devouring stopped instantly, and restoration started. That's what got my attention. I'd been praying about this for 2 years and couldn't change it. And I mean, it changed instantaneously.
Okay, what if you don't have a prophet friend that tells you about the particular? Can you still take care of that curse?
Yes, absolutely, because this is what I've changed what I teach. This is some of the new stuff in the book. Change what I teach. I used to teach that we have to cleanse our bloodline, if you will, all that, and we have to say all the way back to Adam and Eve. I don't believe that anymore. It always bothered me. And the Lord